Welcome to the debate. Today, we're diving deep into the really intricate landscape for businesses as we head into 2025. It's a fascinating time, almost paradoxical. On one hand, you see this incredible surge in entrepreneurship, huge technological leaps like AI becoming mainstream. But on the other, well, businesses are grappling with some serious economic uncertainties, a policy landscape that seems to shift constantly, and these persistent systemic barriers that, frankly, could feel insurmountable for many.
Exactly. And that brings us right to our central question for today. It's something every business leader is wrestling with. Looking at 2025, does a business's survival, its ability to grow, depend primarily on its own internal strategies, how adaptable it is, how quickly it adopts new tech, or is it actually more reliant on external factors, things like systemic support, let's say genuinely more favorable regulatory and policy environment?
That's the core of it. And I'll be arguing today for the primacy of that internal adaptation, focusing on the opportunities businesses can seize and the proactive steps they absolutely can take to navigate what's coming.
And I'll be taking the position that while internal strength is admirable, it often just isn't enough against the sheer force of these external systemic issues and the policy environment. For many businesses, especially, the more vulnerable ones, these external factors aren't just challenges, they are fundamental make or break conditions for survival and any real growth.
Okay, so my perspective, it really comes from seeing the powerful, proactive things businesses are doing internally, not just to, ride out the storm, but to actually find ways to thrive. Now, the economic climate, yeah, it's tough. You've got inflation concerns, supply chain knots still untangling, a volatile labor market, the AI revolution changing everything, shifting consumer habits. It certainly feels like a perfect storm of uncertainty, as some call it. But successful businesses, or the ones aiming to be, they're starting to accept this uncertainty almost as the new normal. They're shifting away from just reacting, sometimes panicking, towards planned, strategic action. This means putting in place really robust financial fortification strategies. It boils down to this. Cash is still king, not just for covering bills, but for the strategic freedom it buys you. It lets businesses make proactive, longer-term bets instead of being forced into reactive, short-sighted moves every time an external shock hits. And this also involves prioritizing what we call operational flexibility. I mean, the basic ability to scale up or down quickly without huge friction. Maybe using more on-demand talent instead of only full-time hires for certain tasks. Or choosing cloud infrastructure that scales with your needs instead of buying massive servers up front. It's about strategically turning fixed costs into variable ones where it makes sense. And businesses are also, quite smartly, doing supply chain stress tests, figuring out backup suppliers, alternative routes before a crisis hits. It's about building resilience from the inside out. We've also seen this incredible surge in AI adoption, even among small businesses. And it's not just for tiny efficiencies. It's having a real impact. AI is getting woven into workflows for everything from automating tedious admin work to creating super personalized marketing, improving customer service with chatbots. And this isn't about replacing people, it's about freeing up human creativity for the higher value strategic thinking. Plus, there's a growing recognition of professional coaching. It delivers real, measurable returns, think 5.1, even 7.1 ROI. It's not just a nice to have, it's becoming a critical investment in leadership, in making sure leaders can handle this complexity. And finally, modern HR, focusing on employee well-being. And let's face it, 83% of employees report job-related challenges. They're offering flexible work, which, 89% of HR pros say boosts retention, ensuring fair pay, supporting skills growth, helping people move up internally. These are all powerful levers within a business's control. They build loyalty, productivity, even with remote teams. These internal strategies, I believe, are the foundation for survival.
Okay, I hear you on the internal strategies, and I agree, they're valuable, commendable even. But respectfully, I have to argue that internal resilience often just hits a wall, an insurmountable one sometimes, when it slams into the systemic external barriers that I think really define the business climate of 2025. My worry is that focusing only on internal fixes kind of overlooks the huge external pressures that actively hold back or even undo the hard work of so many businesses. I mean, look at some recent history. We've seen actions from administrations that many would call, well, reckless. Things like the so-called DOGE cuts, these specific, significant cuts to public services and government contracts. These hit small business contractors hard and disproportionately impact minority and women-owned businesses who often rely more heavily on those kinds of stable contracts. It's not just fewer opportunities. It's the ground shifting beneath existing businesses.
And then consider the tariff situation unfolding from February to April 2025. You've got a broad 10% tariff on all Chinese imports, which naturally triggers retaliation from Canada, China, the EU, plus that 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports. These aren't small tweaks. They are direct policy choices that are driving up costs for essential goods, for raw materials, for everyone. And the data backs this up. It's already forced 51% of small business owners to hit pause on key decisions. That's not strategy. That's paralysis caused by external policy. Add to that the changes in immigration policy planned for 2025. The signals are towards more restrictive measures, and that translates directly into massive workforce disruptions for small businesses. We could be talking about legal statuses expiring almost overnight, creating instant labor shortages. As the labor economist Mark Regis pointed out, losing immigrant workers and consumers is a major drag on job growth. When government actions actively block, say, up to 125,000 refugee admissions, or worse, trigger mass deportations, businesses face real fundamental labor gaps and a smaller customer pool. No internal HR tweak can fully fix that. And critically, minority-owned businesses still face this troubling reality of capital limitations. It's persistent. They pay higher interest rates, they get denied credit more often, and many don't even apply because they fear rejection. This isn't just about needing better internal financial literacy, although that helps. The Minority Business Development Agency, the MBDA report found alarming differences in treatment in lending, even after controlling for things like creditworthiness and the firm's characteristics. That points to deep systemic bias. And finally, there's the new federal Corporate Transparency Act, kicking in January 2025. Some see it as federal overreach. It imposes these heightened disclosure requirements, the beneficial ownership information reporting, specifically on small businesses, those under 20 employees. This creates a significant new compliance burden. It's particularly tough on minority-owned firms, who often lack the dedicated legal or administrative teams larger companies have. It diverts time and money away from actually growing the business towards just staying compliant. These aren't challenges you can just adapt away individually. They demand fundamental shifts in policy and external support.
Okay, let's dig into that a bit more. You brought up the instability, particularly the trade war, the tariffs, as major disruptors. How deeply does that external instability undermine the internal planning efforts I described?
Well, fundamentally, how can businesses effectively plan? How can they even try these proactive internal strategies you mentioned? When the whole economic and political stage is so shaky, we're not discussing minor market shifts. These 2025 tariffs, that sweeping 10% on Chinese goods, the retaliation from Canada, the EU, alongside the steel and aluminum tariffs, they directly inflate input costs right across the supply chain. It injects this profound, sustained uncertainty. Business planning turns from, strategic forecasting into this constant reactive scramble. The fact that 51% of small business owners are pausing major decisions isn't just them being cautious about a storm. It's a direct result of deliberate policy choices that wreck stability. It forces them to either eat the costs, risking their margins, or pass them on, risking customers. It weakens their financial strength when 76% are already worried about rising supply costs. This isn't just an external bump in the road. It's like the road itself is crumbling due to policy.
That's a fair point, and I absolutely don't deny the impact of those external factors. They are real. However, I might frame the necessary business response a little differently. While those pressures exist, look at the analysis from, say, Chase.com on navigating uncertainty. They actually put a 60% probability on a soft landing scenario for the U.S. economy. That suggests a path where growth continues, maybe slower, but holds up, and disinflation carries on. Now, that doesn't erase the risks. There's still a 25% chance of recession, a 15% chance of inflation flaring up again in their model. But it suggests the most likely path has some stability. So instead of being paralyzed by those lower probability, worst-case scenarios, smart businesses are actively building those financial buffers and that operational flexibility we talked about precisely because of the uncertainty.
Okay.
And look at the entrepreneurial spirit. An unprecedented 21 million new business applications filed between 2021 and 2024. We're still seeing 430,000 new applications per month in 2024. This isn't happening in some calm, predictable utopia. It's happening right now amidst these unpredictable economies. What does that tell you? It shows this underlying drive, this human capacity to find and create opportunity, even when government actions or global events create serious headwinds. Many businesses are finding ways to thrive by focusing intensely on what they can control, using internal agility to absorb external shocks, rather than just waiting for perfect conditions that may never arrive.
Does that surge in new businesses, does it really cancel out the instability caused by, say, trade wars? Or does it maybe mask the deeper structural problems about who actually gets to succeed within that surge? I'm still not quite convinced by that argument. You mentioned the troubling reality of capital limitations for minority-owned businesses, and the fact that 83% of all entrepreneurs don't get traditional VC or small business loans at startup. That points to something structural, something an individual's drive alone can't just power through. Even with this entrepreneurial boom, minority firms still face higher loan denial rates, they still pay more interest, they're still less likely to even apply because they expect rejection. And this isn't just about financial literacy. As the MBDA report confirmed, it found alarming differences in treatment even when creditworthiness was equal. How do internal strategies fix systemic bias in lending?
Right.
You called it an overreach. For small businesses, under 20 employees, having to file this beneficial ownership information, the BOI, with FinCEN, that's not a small thing. It adds a serious compliance load. It hits minority-owned firms potentially harder because it pulls resources, time, money you might need for legal advice, away from innovation, away from growth, just into ticking regulatory boxes. Without direct policy interventions, targeted support, protection from these kinds of burdens, individual adaptation, however clever, just feels like it's not enough against these huge systemic barriers.
That's a very compelling point about the disparities, and I absolutely don't deny they exist. They are real challenges. But have you considered that alongside these difficulties, we are seeing positive shifts, both in access and in the nature of the entrepreneurial landscape itself, especially through new approaches? The U.S. Treasury, for instance, reported that the shares of self-employed Americans who are Black, Asian, or Hispanic are near all-time highs. Now, that doesn't erase the barriers, but it does suggest that opportunity is reaching more broadly, that diverse entrepreneurs are finding ways to build economic independence. And while traditional capital is tough, we are seeing innovation there too. Alternative financing models, like revenue-based financing or profit sharing, are being used by funds, like some supported by the Kauffman Foundation.
These models often don't require founders to give up ownership, which directly addresses a major concern for that 83% who avoid traditional routes.
Okay, that's interesting.
Plus, public programs do exist. The SBA microloan program, for example, offers up to $50,000, specifically targeting underserved businesses, even those with little or no credit history. These are concrete external supports designed to enable internal action. And yes, while you rightly point out structural bias, the call to improve financial literacy, especially when 82% of young African Americans interested in starting a business feel they lack proficiency, that highlights a solvable internal development area. It's not about single-handedly overcoming bias, no. But it is about empowering entrepreneurs to better navigate the system that exists, to better utilize the resources that are available and often designed precisely for them. It's about building agency within the current structure.
I guess I'd come at it from a different angle when we talk about the workforce, though. You highlighted internal HR strategies, but the direct shock of immigration policy changes in 2025, The more restrictive measures, the potential for massive workforce disruptions if legal statuses expire abruptly, that feels like an external force majeure that no amount of internal HR finesse can fully counter. We're talking about federal policy potentially blocking up to 125,000 refugee admissions or even leading to mass deportations. This isn't just about retaining the workers you have, it's about a potential evaporation of the available labor supply itself.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Regitz, the economist, made that point clearly. Losing immigrant workers and consumers significantly slows job growth. When policy actively removes or blocks whole segments of the potential workforce, businesses in sectors like hospitality, agriculture, construction sectors, often reliant on immigrant labor, face fundamental shortages, and they lose customers too. That directly hits growth. It can make survival itself impossible, no matter how good your remote work policy or your wellness program is. These feel like macro forces, driven by deliberate policy, that are just far beyond a single company's ability to simply adapt its way out of.
That's an interesting framing, and yes, the impact of immigration policy is certainly a major external factor businesses have to navigate, but I would argue the focus should remain on what businesses can control to maintain stability and productivity within their own walls. It's worth remembering the data showing immigrants are proven job creators, not job takers. They're 80% more likely to start firms, and those firms tend to employ slightly more people than those founded by native-born citizens. So that underscores the immense value of keeping a stable workforce, which is exactly where strong internal HR becomes absolutely critical. So in response to potential external instability, businesses can significantly double down on internal retention. Prioritizing well-being again, 83% of employees face challenges there. Offering genuine flexibility, investing in skills development for current staff. These strategies, like the ones outlined in the 9 Powerful Employee Retention Strategies for 2025 report, they demonstrably increase loyalty. They reduce the very high cost of turnover. It's about creating an environment where your valuable employees choose to stay, even if the external labor market gets tight or chaotic.
Okay.
And furthermore, that surge in small business AI adoption we discussed, it's not just about efficiency gains. It can directly help mitigate labor gaps. By automating routine, mundane tasks, it frees up your existing human team for more complex work, maximizing their output and reducing, maybe not eliminating, but reducing the degree of dependence on external labor flows for certain functions. And yes, businesses also need to proactively audit and bolster compliance regarding their foreign national employees, update their communication plans, be prepared internally to navigate policy shifts. It all comes back to internal agency, taking potential external crises and managing them through foresight, through investment in your people and your technology. So, reflecting on our whole discussion, it still seems clear to me that while external factors absolutely shape the environment, the ultimate survival and growth trajectory for businesses in 2025 really hinges on their internal agility, their proactive planning, and those smart, strategic internal investments. By truly embracing uncertainty as the operating reality, by fortifying their finances for that strategic freedom, building operational flexibility, really nurturing their people with modern HR, and intelligently adopting tech like AI, businesses can do more than just endure. They can actually thrive. That internal capacity to adapt, that entrepreneurial spark, it remains paramount, I think.
And while I certainly agree internal resilience and adaptability are valuable, necessary even, my position remains that for many businesses, they're often simply insufficient when facing down major systemic barriers. For a large segment of the business world, particularly those historically underserved, minority-owned firms, businesses heavily reliant on specific labor markets affected by policy, survival and growth in 2025 are fundamentally tied to things like fair access to capital, a stable, inclusive workforce supply, and a protective, supportive policy environment. Without those foundational external enablers in place, even the most internally adaptive businesses will struggle, perhaps fail, to reach their full potential. It just underscores the critical ongoing need for a regulatory and policy landscape that is genuinely more favorable, more equitable, and really champions all businesses, not just the most resilient.
Well, it's certainly evident that both internal adaptability and external systemic support are not just intertwined, they're deeply interdependent. the strength of one really seems to dictate how effective the other can be.
Absolutely. Exploring these dynamics further, looking deeper into the source material we've discussed today, will definitely offer a richer, more nuanced perspective for anyone trying to navigate this complex, challenging, but yes, also opportunity-filled business environment of 2025.